Well, I never. This is a topic that has opened up a can of worms all around the West. This very idea that governments in English-speaking Western countries, Britain, where I am, America, Australia maybe, could reintroduce conscription into the armed forces. So here in Britain, our armed forces apparently are very depleted, and the threat, they say, from Russia is great, it's real, and it's coming. And there may be a case for a conscripted army. What do you think about that? What do you think the response has been around the West? And I can really only talk about Britain, but I assume it's the same everywhere else. I've spoken to a number of people in my family. I've spoken to friends, business colleagues, even people in the street who I chat to in supermarkets are very open with their opinions. And it's astonishing. And I really don't think that politicians had any idea really how this was going to go down. And I do think it's a toe in the water when it comes to conscription and suggesting we may have to fight the Russians. They're testing us. Would you agree? They're seeing how we respond. And I don't think they're going to be very happy with the response. And I'm going to go through what I've learned. I'll give you my personal opinion, and I'd love to hear yours. So conscription in Britain ended in about 1960. My father was conscripted. He went into the army in 1957 for 2 years. He was a young man, married with one child, and they packed him off to Aden and Germany, 2 years away from his wife and my elder brother. He did it willingly. There wasn't a moment, I've spoken to him about this, there wasn't a moment where he thought he was going to run away. He was going to refuse, he was going to fight, not going into the army to fight. It was his duty. His father did it before him, who fought at the Battle of the Somme in 1916. And I'm sure you can relate to this. Generations back, just about every male generation has fought, apart from this one. So now the government are suggesting they're going to literally drag people into the army, force them to fight. Well, young men these days, it seems, are not willing to do it. The vast majority have just said they won't do it. Older people, middle-aged, into my age bracket, have all said, and this is fascinating, and I'm inclined to agree with this, that had this been suggested 20 years ago, that there was a threat from Russia or any other foreign state, that our countries were going to be under attack, would you fight? The answer would be yes. They would sign up in their millions to fight, like our ancestors did before. But the feeling I get from the people I've spoken to is that they are so disgruntled with their politicians right now that they don't feel this moral duty to fight for their country, which is a bit of a concern, isn't it? If there really is a threat from a foreign state. And the reason they say this is because they feel disenfranchised. They feel that the governments have let them down, and particularly the stock of the British Army, American, I'm sure Australian, the same, would come from generally working classes, white working class men. And this is the group that feels that they have been left out in the cold. And to quote one person, he said, "I am at the bottom of the barrel. Why should I fight for a government who has no respect for me?" This is the feeling I'm getting. Now, this, for me, causes great mental anxiety, because if there is an enemy at the gate, then surely we'd go and fight that enemy. But the sense I get is that a lot of people feel that there is an enemy within, and it's our politicians. And they need to show some respect to the populace before the populace seemingly will fight en masse. I do feel, though, that even though an awful lot of people, including from my age group, are saying, look, I'm not fighting for this government, right? They're disgruntled with their government. I do think that they would fight if the enemy was at the gate. I would. If the country was threatened by Russia or anyone else, and it was a genuine threat, no matter what I thought about our politicians, bearing in mind we can change our politicians, and that's maybe the point here. This is where the politicians may well be getting a shock, because I think it's fast forwarding a change in politicians. Because if the enemy was at the gate, I think we would fight. We would sign up and fight. We would come back, and then we'd look at our politicians and would say, you got us into this mess. You showed no respect. This is what I'm getting from people. And from all walks of life, working class, middle class, and upper class people, all seem to feel this, sense it in their bones that they are not regarded by our politicians. So if it all hit the fan, I do believe that most men, it will be men in the West, will, under the age of 60, I believe, so I'm just in, would go and fight. But I'm not so sure about the very young ones, by the way. I'm really not. It makes me sound like an old middle-aged misery here, but I'm really not certain about young men. However, I think the politicians are going to get a shock, because this is another shock to the system for the general people of the West. And we're now looking at our politicians and wondering about their worth. And this is my own personal opinion. I think that we should be attracting politicians now more from ordinary working life. And I don't mean ordinary working class people. I don't care where somebody comes from. I don't care what colour they are, what creed, what race, gender, religion, or sexuality. I couldn't give a monkey's. But I want the best, the cream of the crop. I want a meritocracy reintroduced. I don't want career politicians who've always dreamt about being politicians and always dreamt about having power. I want, and this is the sense that I get from people that I've spoken to, a new breed of politician. And these politicians will come from life. They may well have been successful business people. They may well have been school teachers. I don't know, but they've had a career. They've had a life, and now they may be coming towards retirement, and they've got a last hurrah to do something good for their country. And stop being obsessed with youth and box ticking and diversity and all of these things. Really, politicians, I believe, should be older. I think they should have lived a life. They should have life experiences. They should have lived through bad situations and solved them. And they should bring all this experience to the table. And generally, they should do it for very little money or no money at all. I would, if I was at a point in my life where I could afford the time and the money, I would want to work for the public good for no money. And I think with my experiences in life, I could bring something to the table. Not as much as many, but I want people to bring their experiences to the table. And this is the impression I'm getting. So a new breed of politicians who are patriotic as well, by the way. Because a lot of, again, men feel that any sign of patriotism has been looked down upon and it's been shunned. And then what somebody said to me was, if I fly a Union Jack, I'm called all things under the sun, from xenophobic to a fascist, for flying the Union Jack. And now they're suggesting I go and fight for that Union Jack, under that Union Jack. The hypocrisy is bonkers beyond belief. You couldn't make it up. That's what I'm getting from people. So the politicians need to show a little more respect to the people that they expect to go and fight for them. They'll be at home, by the way, to save us from some foreign aggressor. But I think we all have internal problems in the West now. I think the West, seemingly, it's imploding. I study history, I write history books, and it seems that we are living through a period the Roman Empire went through it, the Greeks did the same, and a period of implosion where we're all fighting one another. And what did Napoleon say? Something along the lines of, when your enemy is making mistakes, don't interrupt him. And if there are any enemies, foreign enemies out there, which I'm pretty certain there are, then they're sitting back and watching us internally fight. So to sum up, I think the government in Britain by suggesting national conscription have had a bit of a shock. Very few in the scheme of things would march to the local signing up office like they did in the First and Second World War. I think if it really did go badly wrong, they would get the numbers. But I think they need to address how they treat the general populations, the indigenous populations of the Western world. I think they need to treat them better before they start asking them to forcefully fight for them. That's the feeling I'm getting. It's a very interesting time. And I know a lot of people are scared about these times, but it is interesting. And it is up to us to make the changes. We're living through history. So what do you think? Over to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks.